American economist Mark Weisbrot has argued that European authorities are trying to force a regime change in Greece. He's the co-director of the Centre for Economic and Policy Research and joins me now from Washington. Mark, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Now, we know the Greek Prime Minister asked for an extension to the bailout, but the Eurozone ministers basically said, we'll wait and see what the outcome of this referendum is before any new deal can be discussed. Do you think they're hoping that they'll be discussing a possible new deal with someone else?
There's no doubt that they want to get rid of this government. And, you know, the government today called it terrorism. And I think that's it is in many ways fit the classic definition. I mean, they've shut down the banking system this time, and the European Central Bank did that. They decided very deliberately to do that on Sunday to intimidate people into voting the way they want them to vote. And you have the media. New York Times had a very good report today, actually, about what they called, the reporter called the oligarch-dominated media, which is constantly trying to scare people, showing scenarios of disaster if they vote no, trying to tell them they'll be kicked out of the Eurozone. And this is gross exaggeration, of course, and but it really is enormous pressure. And who is responsible for it? It's the European authorities, and they're trying to blame this government. Who is responsible for 6 years of depression in Greece? It's not the Greek governments. They were forced to accept these terms from the European authorities. And as soon as Syriza was elected, they began the process of trying to get rid of him. On February 4th, just 10 days after the election, the European Central Bank cut off the main line of credit to Greece and then put a limit on how much the Greek banks could loan to the government, which is a limit that the previous government didn't have. So really now it's pretty much out in the open. They want to get rid of this government, and they're strangling the economy in order to do it. It's something that really couldn't happen almost anywhere else in the world outside the Eurozone because nobody would tolerate it. We could never have anything like this in the United States, for example.
And the US Congress seems to agree with you on that front. They wrote a letter to the IMF. They said, and I quote, even the IMF has acknowledged in its own research the austerity imposed by Greece's creditors over the past 5 years turned out to be far more devastating to the economy than they had predicted. So my question to you is how much can the European creditors be blamed for the current situation in Greece?
I think they should have almost all the blame. I mean, you can go back to 2009 and think, or before 2009 and the things the government did wrong before that, but it's 6 years already. Nobody should have to suffer that long. And they've done, you know, they've adjusted. They cut imports by 36%. They've got 26% unemployment because the European authorities actually believe that the way to make an economy recover is to push wages down far enough so that you can increase exports. That's actually the strategy that they have followed, and it has not done anything. First of all, exports haven't even increased. But besides that, you have 60% of youth unemployment, and the European authorities are not offering any light at the end of the tunnel. They're not offering any future for Greece. They're just telling them, you're going to take this because we're telling you, and if you don't, we're going to strangle the economy even further until it collapses. And this is something that, I mean, I think it's amazing that you have half the population that understands, in spite of what the media is telling them, who is responsible for this and is willing to say no to it.
And Alexis Tsipras pointed out last night that he's basically said we will be winners no matter what happens on Sunday. Now that to me seems highly optimistic. It seems that Greece will face tough times no matter the outcome of this referendum.
Well, I think that's true. But on the other hand, the other side really doesn't want Greece to leave the euro, and either does the government, of course. They're always trying to portray them as wanting to leave the euro, but they've said 1,000 times they're not going to leave the euro. So what does that mean? It means the European authorities would have to force them out. And they don't want to do that. They just want to, that's why they've opted for this regime change. What they're trying to do is cripple the economy enough. And they have already pushed it back into recession. You know, it was supposed to grow by 2.5% this year until the European Central Bank started squeezing it and now strangling it. So they want to undermine support for the government. And that's one of the reasons why I think the media coverage is also so important, because they're trying to, most of the media in Greece and a lot of it internationally is taking the side of the European authorities and trying to make it look like Greece is the unreasonable party. But they've made so many concessions, and they're not asking. All they're asking really is for the economy to be allowed to recover so that unemployment can come down. And the European authorities are not budging on that. And even the IMF has now just recently acknowledged, you mentioned that congressional letter, that was actually very important too, that letter, because it's telling the IMF, you know, we're holding, for the first time in decades, you know, we may hold you accountable for destroying this economy, being one of the parties with the ECB and the European Commission that has destroyed this economy unnecessarily. But the IMF has now admitted that what the government is demanding is correct, that they need actually debt relief in order for the economy to recover. So they've admitted they've ruined the economy. And, you know, where's the humility here? I would like to see, instead of Martin Schulz and Jean-Claude Juncker campaigning for a yes vote, why don't they admit what they did to the Greek economy and ask for forgiveness? That's really what they should be doing right now.
We'll have to see how this plays out after the vote. Mark Weisbrot, thank you very much for your analysis today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.